She's the one that gets all the work done. Charlotte Lehan has been a dear friend and a guiding light in my historical studies. She's on the State Heritage Tree Board, part of the Oregon Travel Experience, and on the State Cemetery Commission, and is the former chair of the Clackamas County Commission, four-term Mayor of Wilsonville. Give a hand to Charlotte Lehan. From St. Paul, which is small but mighty. Yeah, mighty is St. Paul, with all of its great historians there at Marcy Barrett. Marcy, you and David Rebner. David, you're David here? No, David is here. Just Shirley Sutherland is here. So, ladies from St. Paul, take a bow. And if you want to know anything about the history of St. Paul, take your excellent walking tour, or do anything, these are the two co-conspirators to know over at St. Paul. That's a city, of course, goes from 350 on a normal day up to, 10,000 a day for the rodeo, and survives, somehow keeps its small town charm, and doesn't expand its urban growth boundary. Great job, St. Paul. Always a pleasure to have you. Who else here from St. Paul? Okay, my next door neighbors, Mike and Kathy McCauley. And Mike is my history reading co-conspirator. He and I swap books. So it's always good if you're a lover of history, a reader of history, to have a friend that you can always share a good book with. So please welcome my next door neighbor. Kathy, thank you for putting up with me and Mike, so when we do that stuff. I'm going to talk about three things tonight. First of all, Ewing Young Day, why we should celebrate. Second of all, I want to talk about the Shampooing pageant and some of the opportunities that are inherent in that. And finally, talk about the National Heritage Area that has been kind of a political football that's been tossed around. A few just additional words of background. So I live with Rachel in a small farm at Shampooing, and I'm former president of the Friends of Historic Shampooing, and very active in the Butteville store, where, we see Joe all the time. Joe is there at the Butteville store, yes, and his lovely wife, at the Butteville store enjoying our music program. So Joe, thanks for coming over and meeting with us there. Finally, I just want to make some points about what communities can do to grow history in local areas, and some ideas that are floating around that maybe just, a few ideas that we might collaborate on. So first, let's talk about Ewing Young. Many communities don't have a kind of an origin story. And I won't pick on Wilsonville, but who is Wilsonville? Who's Wilson? Anybody know that in Charlotte and Maine? He was the postmaster who named the town after himself. So we, Wilsonville being a kind of a white spot in the road, grew. And as Charlotte likes to say, geography is destiny. And eventually, over time, as the transportation corridor grew. The origin story of, Newberg is way more interesting, I would say. And that is the Chehalem Valley is really that special place that after the French Canadian trappers traveled all the bottomlands in the Intermountain West, they were in every river valley trapping the beaver. When it was time to kind of, hang up the saddle, the place they came to was here. And the reason why they came here was this is a great place to be. There was grass that went all the way through the valley. Can you imagine what it was like for Ewing Young in the early 1830s to stand at the point where the Ewing Young Oak is today and just take a 360-degree view of what the Chehalem Valley was like? Incredible. Grass as high as your shoulder. Beautiful timber that could be cut so you could build your homes. Absolutely wonderful hills. You have the Red Hills, and just a beautiful place to be. So when the trappers of the Hudson's Bay Company had a place to come to, they came to French Prairie and they came to the Chehalem Valley. And of course, we at Shampooing, we were the head of navigation because of the low bank, because of the silt basically from your Chehalem Creek dump, and gave us a low bank, which became the head of navigation for the Willamette Valley. So take your bateau up the river, land at Camp de Sable, the French Camp of the Sand. You get out, you get on your horse, hopefully somebody brought you one there, and you can ride from there all the way down to California to trap the beaver and bring your pelts back up and be loaded and shipped out before Vancouver. It's a great story to tell. And you here in Newberg are right in the center. So why Ewing Young? Ewing Young was a character. There was so much about Ewing Young that makes me think he was kind of the Tommy Lee Jones of the early trappers. So what we know about Ewing Young is that he was really the guy that established the early trade from Spain, from the Spanish part of America and Mexico, up to the Pacific coast. And his, not just his death and his lack of probate was the cause, of the wolf meetings in order to settle his estate, which Ira Babcock did with the, with the law books he packed in his saddlebags. But before then, really settlement would not have been possible had he not brought his, 430 curly horn cattle up, from California, from the Bay Area. So he was able to drive up his Remuda horses. Of course, Governor Alvarado thought he was a horse thief, wrote the letter to John McLaughlin. John McLaughlin turned him out, wouldn't really serve him at the port in Oregon City. But over time, Ewing Young kind of screwed things up. He said he'd start a still. He'd do the first distilling. Both, Jason Lee at the Willamette Mission and John McLaughlin thought, no, this is not good for Indian relations. We don't want them to do it. So they talked Ewing Young into taking the trip down to the Bay Area. And I think at that point they kind of went, we're done with this guy. This troublemaker, Ewing Young, he's East Coast. Indians will get him. The cattle will never get to Oregon. Well, guess what, folks? The cattle got here. And with that cattle, no longer could the Hudson's Bay Company only rent you a cow. They would only rent you a cow. They would not sell you a cow. You could have milk but not meat. And instead of renting a cow that presumably you return in good shape, you were able to buy a steer, you eat that steer, provide the meat that you need to have settled in the Willamette Valley. Had we not had the cattle from the Willamette Cattle Company, who were all people from Newberg, we would not have had early settlement and be prepared for the migration of 1843. So this kind of foundation story of your community is a rich Oregon story. It's a story that other communities wish they had. I mean, downriver in Stumptown, you got a couple of guys flipping a coin, trying to decide what to call it. They didn't have the originality to call it by an Indian name, right? And down in Stumptown, I don't know if you know the story, but the reason why I call it Stumptown is that to get your taxes knocked down, you could pull stumps and you got a little credit on your tax bill. But anyway, point is, you've got this great, rich character, Ewing Young, but for so long, he was not celebrated. So I wanted to tell you a story about the bill. So in the world of history, I am not an original historian. I'm a person who reads good history, and then I try to popularize history. And I love it, because I learn historical stories, I love to give speeches about it, I love to meet with other historians, I love to hear what you, other historians, have to say about history. And through that, we create community around this history, which is super important, I think, for what we need to do in life. After all, if we don't learn those stories, we're going to be forced to relive them, And as Shakespeare would say, past is prologue, so let's get prepared. So anyway, with the Ewing Young bill, the way it happened was my mom was a journalist, wrote a story for the Oregon Journal about Ewing Young, and got interested in Ewing Young. Then I read the Holmes book. The Holmes book is probably the only real book that's dedicated to Ewing Young. So my first ask of you tonight is that somebody rewrite this book that's out of print and updated, and put additional historical research into it. And then we'll pass the hat and self-publish this thing. But this book is what needs to be updated about Ewing Young. And I used to work with a U.S. senator who said, it was like bear meat. The more you chewed it, the bigger it got. That's what Ewing Young's story is like. Every time you turn the page and read a new piece of it, there's a geopolitical story about who's going to control the Oregon country. Is it going to be the Spanish in California? Is it going to be the British? Is it going to be the Russians? Or is it going to be those upstart American trappers who are starting to settle there? It's a wonderful story, and that is there. So Ewing Young has all these excellent pieces of it. So in my case, in the 2009 Oregon legislature, I went to your senator, Larry George, not Gary, but his son, Larry. And I said to Larry, I said, I want to do a bill on Robert Newell. Now, Robert Newell, of course, is the kind of central figure of Champoeg. So Robert Newell, lived at Champoeg. He was the first Speaker of the Oregon House. He was one of the first, committee that put together the Organic Acts of Oregon after the Wolf meetings and in the time of the provisional government. And Larry said, yeah, that's worthy goal and worthy bill, and I'll be happy to do it on one condition. I said, yes, Senator, what is that condition? He says, you got to do a bill on Ewing Young. So the gauntlet was thrown down. And Larry George was extremely helpful. I kind of pressed him. I said, now why do you want this bill about Ewing Young? He said, because I went to Ewing Young grade school. And it's really a great story, and you really ought to learn the story. And so I said, okay, I will. And so I was able to learn the story, write the bill, Senate Bill 625, which we got passed in the 2011 session of the Oregon legislature. So normally when you do these bills, they are memorials, so they don't have really effective statute. They're really kind of the sense of, the legislative body. In this case, Larry says, no, we're going to make this a law. And I said, well, what's that mean? He says, we're going to make one day every year, that's Ewing Young Day in Oregon. And it's a big ask. I mean, you got to convince both houses of the legislature, you got to get the governor to sign it. But we did. We got the bill through. And we got it through largely because we had good testimony. So we wrote some really good testimony that just kind of put out enough interest in Ewing Young, both in the House and the Senate floor statements, that we were able to get the bill passed. So the problem with the Oregon revised statutes in general is that they are revised constantly. Every 2 years, the laws get changed. And as legislature can give, the legislature can also take it away. And so if you don't use parts of the statute, and in this particular case, it's ORS 187230, it says February 9th of each year shall be known as Ewing Young Day to commemorate Ewing Young's contribution to the formation of Oregon's provisional government and the aid to the settlers of the Willamette Valley. So that is black letter Oregon law. If we don't use that statute, somebody someday will say, well, hey, we have all this dead statute in the ORS, let's just pull that out. So, religiously, every year since 2001, I have been, advocating, let's do something on Ewing Young Day, so that when somebody says, hey, we're going to change the 197 section, I can say, whoa, wait a second, we're using that statute, So thank you, Newberg School District, because Ewing Young Elementary School has kept the torch alive. Every year they have a pageant, and these are grade school kids, and they rehearse and have excellent historical lines, and they tell the story of Ewing Young, and they wear funny hats that look like Winston cats, but they are actually pretty historically accurate. But that's not the point. The point is the spirit of the thing. They kept this idea of Ewing Young alive. And so this year, thank you, Rachel. Where's Leah? Thank you, Leah. We have a beachhead now and a bigger opportunity to celebrate Ewing Young Day. And through the good graces of the city of Newberg, thank you, Joe, and the library, the Newberg Public Library, we are going to have a Ewing Young Day event. Now, because of scheduling and the practicality of it, we're having it on Saturday the 16th, and Leah's going to talk about that in a minute. But really, every year on the 9th of February is Ewing Young Day. So, fellow citizens, this is our opportunity. Let's use it or lose it, and make sure we don't have it go away. So I would say, Leah's going to talk about this after I'm done here, but we have the opportunity to make Ewing Young Day a bigger way to popularize history, to celebrate your history, and to try to make it something that will remind people of Ewing Young. So 3 asks here today. First of all, will somebody please help me rewrite this book? Second of all, if somebody's really good at movie treatments, this is a movie waiting to be made in this guy's life. I mean, this would be a fantastic movie about a rugged individualist who really made, commerce happen. He was the first guy to build the sawmill and the grist mill here. but he struggled for his entire life. And this one little piece of it is, you know, he's down in college in New Mexico. A young man stumbles into his camp. He says, I think I can put you to work as a dishwasher. The guy says yes. He comes with him on his journey from college into the Southwest for trading with the Mexicans. And that's how Kit Carson learned the ways of the trail. You know, Ewing Young trained Kit Carson. Well, Rachel and I had the opportunity to go to Nevada and stay in Carson City. And everything in Nevada is about Kit Carson. But Kit Carson wouldn't have been Kit Carson were it not for Ewing Young, right? So, therefore, Ewing Young is great. So let's somebody write a movie treatment here, and if we can get Hollywood to do a movie on Ewing Young, that will put Newberg on the map. We need to do that. And the third thing is, please help be a co-conspirator about Ewing Young Day. And so we got the bones of a great event coming up on the 16th that we can talk about. The next piece of my little talk tonight is about the pageant. And Joe really is the one who has inspired me through Leah about this. You know, the Shampooey pageant is the official state pageant of Oregon. And let me read the statute. This is, again, black letter law. ORS 186-130, Shampooey Historical Pageant, to the official statehood pageant. The Shampooey Historical Pageant is proclaimed to be the official pageant of Oregon statehood. Section 2. The State Parks and Recreation Department shall encourage the further development of the pageant and promote increased attendance at its performances. That's the policy of the state of Oregon, folks. So what happened to the pageant was it really wasn't a good fit for the park. The park is a beautiful natural place. The pageant brought lots of people, lots of concerns about parking. As you remember, they built a really nice amphitheater. And, you know, you remember going to it. It was really kind of fun, as I remember it. But it didn't work out for the park. And so eventually the park said, it may be a great thing, and maybe in the law, but it's not the right thing for here. And then in order to try to make it work financially, they put in rock music festivals. The neighbors complained. Somebody found a couple of syringes, and that was the end of the pageant. So the pageant is sitting there like a racehorse in the stall, waiting for the right community to saddle it up, put the bit in the teeth, and make the pageant their own. I would sure like this not to say Mindu. We at the grubby end, as George would like to say, or Dennis would like to say, need to be able to look out for Newberg, because really this is a Newberg thing, because really you're the closest population to Shampooey Park. And we who live in French Prairie, I may speak for my colleagues and all friends, we really want to keep the people north of Oregon, okay? So we don't want a lot of people coming over building hotels in Shampooey Park. We want to keep Shampooey Park nice and natural. So I'd like to kind of throw out the idea that we work with the city of Newberg to find a way to do the Shampooey pageant here and to make that a tourism opportunity. And I think Joe is thinking of ways that the city might do that. So
there's a dozen people so far. And what's happened is we've got a bunch of people together. We got the original scripts. We're getting all of the permissions. If you remember back, if you were back here in 88, 89, back there, the soundtrack that was done, the actors, we have a list of about 20 of the actors so far. Was done by the London Symphony. It was written by a pretty famous music, whatever you call it, composer, Ted Nichols. And right now, for fun, if you ever want to do it, go on YouTube, and you can see about 4 of the years of the pageant. It's pretty grainy that somebody had gotten, but it's on there. So we heard the issues of some of the reasons why it didn't make it over there. And, you know, the original, the people that made that place still live here. They're in Friendsview, still alive and kicking. And an interesting thing is that their artistic director for 2 of the years, he was a Fox graduate. And he did his help out there because that was his professor who had written it. He went out for the last 18 years. He's been the head of theater and theater and I think they call it arts at the University of Puget Sound. He retires this summer, and his wife's family still lives here. So we're laying a guilt trip on him to say, come back home and maybe be part of the summer pageant.
It helps, he was one of my profs, so.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
So the opportunity is here, and we're starting to take
It's here,
steps.
and here's the thing where we were looking. So what's going on in town and why we think we can make it happen this time is that part of the problem we heard from the actors and the director is that when it rained, they didn't have another place. So at the minimum, we started and said, could it come here to the cultural center? And while there's no agreements that it's kind of conceptually that would happen. Then we looked at the site for where an amphitheater can be constructed. If you watch the 2,000 or 3,000 people that come to Tunes, one of the ideas was here at the amphitheater, but we're outgrowing this. You know, it just gets too crowded for the neighborhood. So 2 places have come up, and one I think is likely, and I wish they were here tonight. One is that the old landfill is being transferred from the county to CPRD. CPRD would like to see that as ball fields, soccer, rugby, and that kind of stuff. But it takes money to develop it. So another group has approached Live Nations, the promotion company, and they are looking for 3 places to build venues in the state. Hood River, Ashland, which has its challenges because of the, all of the smoke from the last 2 years, and we've offered in this place. So we're waiting to hear that. That's the long shot stuff. The short term, which is probably more likely, is that if you've been out to Ewing there's a whiskey distillery out there now. Okay, and Bev and Doug Root own the distillery. Their whole family owns what is called Oakhurst.
Oakhurst, right.
Oakhurst Racetrack. If you've ever been out there, that's where the Kentucky Derby winning horse is out there.
Right.
Fantastic place. Their proposal is to build an indoor performing arts center there. And so they are the ones that were trying to go slowly. And I'm saying way too much, it'll probably get us all in trouble later. But it's to encourage them, because they've been shown that here's a group of people that wants to put this on. They've been shown the actors, and some that are willing to come back. They've been shown the rights, and we say, if you open it up, and what you were already going to do, and if you've not been out there, you can see they have a lot of, they're both historians, or they love history. And so they have huge, big banners and stuff about Ewing Young and others up there. And then there is the other part that rolls into this. There's an arts company right now. If you've not seen them, you should. They're operating their 3rd year. I think it's called the Mid-Willamette Shakespeare Group. They're out on Dock Road. Their property touches Ewing Young. So what that does for us, and think back to the books written about when Ashland started, is that there's now a group of about a half dozen artists. A couple of them are equity actors, they're professional actors. And this other company has made money now for the 3rd year. They become the nucleus of a professional acting group that then can take people from the community and put that on. So all that stuff is going on. If you love it, you can send just Joe an email at the city, and I'll hook you up with people. And it's too bad they weren't here tonight.
Let's give Joe Hannon a big
No.
hand.
This is just fun. And for us, and I don't know if any of you knew that Leah is really sitting on the other side of that Leah has done, those of us who have been here for less than 10 or 20 years and stuff in the area, we're the beneficiaries of people like Leah. And there's another folk sitting back here has the history of Newberg in his head. So, but there's a lot of people that have done a bunch of stuff. And Leah is retiring at the end of this year. And what a huge loss for us. But it's her and her professional librarians that are teaching the kids that end up in Rachel's classes that then come back in to help us, and, you know.
So
there's
Leah,
a
you
whole
have
bunch of
lots
other
of
people.
time to work on
If I
this.
didn't say anything about Barbara, I'd get in trouble, but the same one, there's historians here. Now, this group may be of only 25 of us, but there's a whole bunch out there. And George Edmondson, lastly, is speaking to the City Club. If you've never been to the City Club, you should. It's right in this building on every other Tuesday.
First and third.
Okay, first and third. And in 3 performances from now, or 3 City Club lectures, he's speaking on Newberg, where Oregon's history started. And, you know, he lost his wife, and he seemed to, we used to live right by him, and he kind of lost his energy. He has now gotten re-energized, because he said he needs to, and people like him, need to tell the story of Oregon starting here. And that's, so if nothing else, this whole idea gives him a spark to come back, and he's, and the last part of it was, other part of this proposal was, what they said, that when we had Shampooey, that it was the same story. So 4 authors, including George, have said, let's tell other stories. And there are 2 unpublished transcripts in Rachel's library right now of basically the founders of George Fox.
Right.
They have never been translated into plays. And there are professors at Fox who have that skill. So some way, we're going to get those stories out too.
So historians, we have a great opportunity here. And telling the Shampooey story, the story of the beginning of Oregon State, that this is a perfect place to do it. And if I, Joe, I'm just going to press it a little farther. You know, the city governments collect the transient lodging tax. That's money that comes from, room rentals. It produces some money that's available for making public events and other venues, things which encourage tourism. So there is some tourism. I just want to say there is a huge appetite for history, particularly among seniors. And I want to give you just one example. Like in Wilsonville, we have the history pub at the McMenamins. It is packed every single time. And there are people standing up around the outside, and you look at who's there. These are people from Charbonneau. These are a lot of retired people. There are people who read history for fun and are very interested in history. So I believe there's a market here that's unserved that we should step up and serve. And so thank you. So the pageant is a great opportunity. The last thing I want to talk about tonight, and I've gone over my time.
You're good.
But I'll just, I'll
We
just
still
press
have
on
half an
for just a
hour.
moment more about the, thank you, about the National Heritage Area. So the National Heritage Area, there are, 120 nationwide or something, and there's none west of the Rockies, although I think they're trying to put one in Seattle or whatever. But primarily this is proposals, but the Congress has been reluctant to put them forward. And so the people in Oregon City wanted to be the first National Heritage Area, and so they formed the Willamette Falls National Heritage Area Coalition. I served on the board for about 2 years, and in the course of things, we found that they didn't get our story right. That they wrote a book where the stories, especially of St. Paul, Shampooey, French Prairie, were not really told correctly, and then the emphasis of this effort was on the Falls of Oregon City. And so they put together a feasibility study, which I think is historically flawed, and there are a lot of problems with it. So naturally, as a mild-mannered lobbyist, I said, I'm going to kill your bill, because I can do that. That's what I do for a living in this thing, is kill people's bills. I said, until you get the history right, forget about any cooperation upriver, and forget about your bill. Well, the National Park Service has said they need us, because we have the real heritage story about Oregon. This is where Oregon began. So there has been a negotiation about how to keep the upriver communities on board. And Marcy has been a warrior on this issue. Thank you, Marcy. And I'm here to report that there has been a breakthrough, and they agreed to revisit the name, which is good, because Willamette Falls National Heritage Area has nothing really to say about us. It's about them and their boosterism and their wanting to promote Oregon City. And remember, the Shampoo-Oregon City conflict goes back before the provisional government. I mean, they're always trying to steal our mojo. God, there we had the territorial capital, and then they move it to Oregon City in 1848. Anyway, but the point is, I think we have a kind of breakthrough on this that requires a couple of things. Each community will need to write its own history. Nobody is going to presume to write your history for the National Heritage Area for you. And second of all, there needs to be upriver representation. Not some kind of, advisory council, which is like sitting at the kids' table and eating Thanksgiving, We're not going to sit at the kids' table. We're going to sit at the table with everybody else in making these decisions, And thirdly, if there's getting money out of this, which there may be some federal money, it needs to be equally spread out so that every community gets a piece of that. What it looked like is we're going to use you and your credibility so that we, Oregon City, can get the money and not share it. Well, I'm sorry, we're not going to do that deal. That's just not good for us. So anyhow, this kind of poker game is still continuing, but I'm starting to see the other side check its bet and kind of going, maybe we better fold here. And if they do, then I would expect we would have appointees to the Heritage Committee Coalition Board and be able to do something which really correctly represents your story, gives you the opportunity to say it. So finally, I really love history, and I really love historians, and I think you are all really great historians. And as I get, older in life, I want to read good history. I want to talk about good history with my friends. I want to know how to do good original research, and I want, on a good day, write up my history in a way that other people enjoy it. If we can do that together as a community, then I think our future will be bright, and I invite you all to engage in that community and be part of it. So thank you very much, Rachel, for the opportunity. I'd be happy to respond to any Charlotte, you had to ask the first question.
Yes. No, I was gonna say the gauntlet has been thrown. We have a lot of challenges, so let's go for questions.
Okay.
Questions, Leah, and I
Okay,
want
the
to
gentleman in the hat,
Two questions.
please.
Are you convinced that Young is buried at the Young tree?
No, I'm not. Okay, so when the DAR replaced the plaque, we had an exhaustive historical study, and it became a debate between the historians that would, the Miranda Smith story of pressing the acorn in Ewing Young's fresh grave, and out of that grew the Ewing Young oak, as opposed to the archaeologists who looked at the tree and said, this tree predates the death by about 80 years. So we had to take that argument from historians versus archaeologists to the National DAR Historical Board, and they looked at it and go, this is really inconclusive. So we have to say that we believe, we have to use kind of a little bit of weasel wording. Where was Ewing Young buried? Clearly on the property, but is he underneath the tree? I don't want to